The Slovenian flag is flying proudly in the wind because I'm reporting from my second home with the updated Honda NT1100. Upgraded DCT, and for the first time a semi-active suspension available. Let's see how well it works on tour. Hello and greetings folks, great to have you tuning in again. We're on the road and just look at that view. We're back again, Dobrodošli in Slovenia, just a bit west of Ljubljana and our base, Hotel Grof. That's right, there's now a Moho in Slovenia for the very first time. We've really been waiting a long time for this. Moho is a brilliant partner when you're out on a motorbike tour. These are hoteliers who are fully geared towards bikers. They offer services like washing and drying your smelly gear overnight or giving you brilliant tour tips, like the one we're actually following right now. And of course, you still need a good machine. That part's not provided by the hotel, which brings us to this, the new NT1100. It's just received a major update. Above all, the styling has been, I'd say, sharpened a bit. I actually like it even more now. It's taken on a slightly more insect-like, aggressive look, although really it's not an aggressive bike. It's a properly versatile machine, a touring bike that can do a bit of everything. The DCT is now on board in its latest form, and for the first time, Showa's EERA is included. That's the electronic suspension or electronically controlled chassis. So that really changes the game for the Honda NT, which we've already praised quite a bit over the last few years. And that's exactly what we're going to check out now on these brilliant Slovenian roads. We're currently heading north, winding our way through the hills, and up ahead you can see the mountains rising in the distance. That's where the Mangart is, which many of you will know. The Vršič Pass, the Julian Alps, they're all waiting for us. So I'd say enough talking, let's get this adventure started. So far, riding the NT has honestly been a dream. First, we had some motorway riding in absolutely dreadful weather, but once again, the wind protection on the NT1100 proved to be outstanding, thanks to that massive windscreen that can be flipped up really high. Sure, adjusting the screen while riding isn't exactly effortless, but still, it was a smooth and comfy ride. I had the semi-active suspension set to full comfort mode, just gliding along like a sofa on wheels. And then, today's ride, right through the heart of Slovenia, such wonderfully varied roads, and it gave me the chance to play around a bit with the DCT settings. I found my sweet spot now. For me, just like before really, D mode is perfect when I want to take it really easy. And S1, Sport Mode 1 on the DCT, that's spot on when I'm cruising along comfortably while sometimes wanting to go a bit faster. And honestly, the Slovenian landscape really invites you to do just both. Right in the middle of the country, you get this fairly steep, hilly landscape, endlessly winding, narrow little roads that twist their way up and down. And that's exactly where the NT really shines, in my opinion. It offers loads of comfort. You're sitting completely upright on it. And despite its fairly hefty weight, it's a joyful ride. I wouldn't call it overly agile, but it's definitely not sluggish either. It tips into corners nicely and then thumps its way out of those tight bends with that powerful, pure twin-cylinder engine. There's plenty of pull and it sounds really good too. Especially considering it's now Euro 5 plus compliant, that's worth mentioning. It really doesn't put a foot wrong. The only real challenge has been the temperatures, particularly during slower riding sections. Because with the excellent wind protection, you don't actually get much airflow reaching the rider through the cooling vents, so that can be a bit of a downside. But when you want to push it a bit, the engine still has plenty of punch to keep things fun. And at the same time, that high torque really helps when accelerating out of tight corners. So far, I think it's a brilliant addition, this silky smooth yet clearly effective suspension on the NT. Even on very comfortable to slightly more spirited sections, I never had to settle for a compromise. I could just go for it. And the tour up to now, honestly, it's been a dream. I've enjoyed every second of it 100%. We made it, Wörthersich Pass in all its glory, just catching a bit of golden hour. It's absolutely dreamy. You don't even know where to focus. With a road this amazing, should you concentrate on the riding or just soak in the scenery? Either way, it's a total joy. Now about the experience with the NT1100, comparing the latest version of the DCT to older models, I do think there are some differences. But it's honestly tough to say without a direct comparison, because the DCT was already incredibly refined, in my opinion. The changes really are in the finer details. Maybe I'm imagining it, but it feels like throttle response at low revs is even cleaner now. But the biggest benefit, the most noticeable change on the 2025 NT1100 is without a doubt the semi-active suspension. You really notice it here. I mentioned it earlier, first of all in terms of comfort and the absence of compromise when it comes to suspension settings. With the different modes, you can now adapt far better to the conditions and your current riding style or situation, which means you're simply better equipped for whatever's ahead. But more than that, because even with a touring bike, and even if it's not made specifically for it, I really enjoy riding in a slightly more spirited, sportier way. And I'm sure I'm not the only touring rider out there who feels that way, and that's where I used to find the NT a bit limiting, mainly in terms of lean angle clearance. With a conventional suspension setup, you didn't really want to stiffen it up too much, understandably so, because after all, it's still a touring machine. But the downside was, especially in tight corners where you go in with a bit of momentum, and given the relatively high weight of the bike, it would dive in a bit too much underload, which made the already not overly generous lean angle clearance even more restricted. But now with the electronics, that's been dialed back. The system adjusts the damping to match the riding conditions, and that means the bike no longer squats down as much, even when you're riding a bit more briskly. And that in turn brings me a whole lot of extra enjoyment. And now I really find myself thinking, wow, I actually really like the NT. I could definitely see myself doing much longer tours than what we've done today. And to be fair, we're already clocking up a solid 400 kilometers. But still, now I genuinely consider it for a proper holiday. Also worth mentioning, our tires. We had, as I said earlier, absolutely catastrophic rain on the motorway, practically flooding. That gave us the chance to really test the wet weather performance, the water drainage of the tire. But today it's been the complete opposite. High temperatures and in parts excellent asphalt, which means a lot of stress on the tires. And with the new Metzeler Road Tech 2 we fitted, there's absolutely nothing to complain about in any area. Even now with temperatures over 30 degrees, the bike's considerable weight and really pushing the NT to what it's capable of. It's shown no signs of excessive wear. The tire hasn't started to smear, it hasn't overheated, nothing like that. What I really like as well is the turn-in behavior. The NT itself doesn't have an overly sharp or aggressive turn-in. I'd call it balanced. It's very neutral, very linear. There's no sudden tipping point or anything like that. It does require a bit of steady input, especially on those tight S-curves we often get here in this part of Slovenia. And I think the tire works brilliantly with that, because it also has a very rounded profile. Especially the front tire, it really steers into the bend willingly, and with all those tight hairpins I felt totally confident thanks in part to the dual compound construction. You can lean in nicely, ride with intent, but in a smooth, controlled way. No need to force anything, just flowing through the curve. The sun's going down now, we're grabbing a few more nice shots here, and it's only the first day of riding, yet already packed with highlights. So I'd better keep it short. I'll sign off for now. We're wrapping up today's ride, and then we'll see what tomorrow brings. Next stop with the NT, a warm welcome from the Logar Valley. We've already had quite a bit today. As I mentioned earlier, we also pushed the sportier side a little because Slovenia really does offer roads that let you stretch things a bit. It's insanely good fun. And sorry about how I'm looking, it's seriously hot. We're at 35 degrees now and it's expected to hit 36 later, so I've already started to shed some layers. The Logar Valley is in Slovenian Carinthia, so fairly close to the Austrian-Slovenian border. And the scenery here just invites you to take things a bit more gently. The NT fits that mood perfectly too, with its relaxed seating position, which I've already mentioned, and the fantastic suspension. But also its practical traits, like the low fuel consumption. On this tour, we've recorded 4.9 liters per 100 kilometers. Plenty of storage space too. On the non-exhaust side, you can actually fit a full face helmet. We've added a bit more with an SW Motec rear bag on top, which is just super practical and keeps everything easy to access. Before we get to that though, I figured, well, I'm not out here alone and you shouldn't only be hearing my thoughts and impressions or just my highlights from touring Slovenia with the NT1100. So let's see what my colleagues have to say about it.
To answer Gregor's question about my favorite moment, I think I actually have to name two. It's totally natural that when you're still relatively new to the scene, when you haven't ridden that many bikes yet, especially in this weight and performance class, you feel a certain amount of respect towards it. I think that's completely normal. And one really great moment was when I first got on the NT and rode those first few meters. I was genuinely shocked by how easy it is to ride. Even for someone like me, I'm a bit taller and I don't have a ton of strength in my arms. It was absolutely no problem. I felt super comfortable, and in terms of handling, it's surprisingly agile, really sporty, and you can flick it through the bends without any effort at all, which brings me to my second moment. Yesterday was a full-on day of corners, even some really tight hairpins, and I noticed again that it wasn't an issue at all. Of course, the DCT really takes the stress out of things. It handles all the shifting for you, which makes everything much more relaxed. So that's also when I realized that the weight itself isn't really a barrier for me as long as you're moving forwards. Now, to answer what I'd wish for in the future, or if I had a suggestion for improvement, even though I just said that once you're moving, the weight's no problem at all, I do have a bit of a dream, a bit of wishful thinking. I'd love for it to be a bit lighter. And I've actually got an anecdote to go with that. One I'm not exactly proud of, but I think it's just reality for people like me who may be quite tall, but not especially strong. The bike tipped over on me while standing still. And in that moment, I just couldn't do anything about it. So yeah, I can't lift the thing back up on my own, and that's why it gets 4.5 stars from me instead of a full 5. But honestly, that's just the reality in this performance class or in this crossover and touring segment in general. They're just heavy bikes. But if I could pick one thing to change, because overall I find it incredibly well-rounded and easy to handle, it would definitely be the weight.
The NT1100 was our long-term tester back in 2022. When it first hit the market, to me it felt like the Africa Twin made for the road. I had sky-high expectations, and I have to say, they weren't fully met back then. The bike had loads of strengths, no doubt, but when it came to sporty riding, especially with my weight, it quickly hit its limits in terms of lean angle clearance, and that's exactly what gave me my aha moment with the 2025 NT. I got on, picked up the pace, leaned into the bends, and this electronic suspension really takes the whole riding experience on twisty roads to another level. You've got to say it clearly, it's a real step forward. Absolutely brilliant. Now it's got that premium feel that, in my opinion, really suits it. That was my personal highlight of the Slovenia tour with the NT. Other than that, it's kept all its previous strengths, thankfully. And there are actually two things I'd wish for. First, now that they've let us test this version, I hope next time they'll be bold enough to actually give us that blue color that's finally available on the NT. So maybe a bit more variety in colors for the 2026 model year, that'd be great. And secondly, something that's actually more important in day-to-day use, especially when you're riding like we are now in Slovenia, in the height of summer at 35 degrees, they really need to get the heat management under control. That big twin-cylinder engine with its 112 Newton meters, now delivering even more punch, unfortunately also gives off a lot of heat. And the way the fairing's designed isn't ideal. It directs the airflow straight past the engine and onto your legs. That means, with the already extensive wind protection, you get almost no ventilation down low. It ends up feeling like you're being heated instead of cooled. And for someone like me who's quite sensitive to heat, it's not exactly pleasant. But all in all, it's still a top-class touring bike. It would definitely be right at the top of my list if I had to choose just one.
There you have it, and before I completely melt, here are a few more facts and interesting bits about the Logar Valley. It's definitely worth a visit. Maybe not so much for riding, since it's only about a 7-kilometer long road and a dead end, but for hiking the area is absolutely top notch. The landscape is just stunning. You'll have seen it in the footage, the drone shots in the background, this massive glacial formation, or rather a mountain range shaped by ancient glaciers. One more thing worth mentioning, it's €7 per motorcycle to enter, but for us, and as a bit of a break when you want to get off the bike for a while, we thought, yeah, totally worth it. And before you know it, we've already reached the end. Just behind the camera, you can see the Slovenian-Austrian border is approaching, and with it, sadly, the end of our tour through beautiful Slovenia, as well as our time with these fantastic crossover bikes. I hope we managed to give you a bit of insight, on the one hand, into why Slovenia is so worth visiting, and on the other, what makes the Honda NT1100 with DCT and for the first time electronic suspension standout. If I had to sum it all up again, I'd say it's the combination of extremely relaxed ergonomics, truly practical features, the tried and tested and very versatile DCT gearbox, and of course the new electronic suspension, which brings a whole new level of adaptability and really smooths out the usual compromises in this class when it comes to different riding styles and uses. That combo just allowed us to enjoy Slovenia to the fullest. I'd put it like this: what defines the NT is you hop on, feel instantly comfortable, and just forget you have to do anything special. You just enjoy the ride. The only thing I'd still like to add is that we're now heading home, and there's something related to this matter. We've avoided the motorways in Slovenia as much as possible, but we still had to do long stretches of it on our first riding day. The wind protection of the NT, we've always considered one of the best in this touring crossover class, and this department now has been updated too. It still is impressively quiet behind the shield, but unfortunately now I'm getting a bit of turbulence around the helmet, both left and right. This wasn't the case with the previous model, so that's the one thing I'd still tweak, just that little detail, so the Honda NT1100 could truly be a 10 out of 10 tourer. Maybe if someone from Honda is watching, you could bring back the old windscreen but keep all the other improvements. Then it'd be an absolute winner. And even now, it's already incredibly close to being that. And I hope this video was also pretty close to being a winner. If you feel it was, give us a thumbs up, check out the other videos, subscribe to the channel, and we'll definitely see each other again soon. Us and maybe even the NT as well, who knows. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye for now.